Welcome back to Unapologetically Visible, the podcast for high achieving Latina and women of color founders who are done being the best kept secret. I'm your host, Christina Olivarez, award winning visibility and leadership coach, TEDx speaker, and founder and CEO of the Social Butterfly Gal and Hustle and Socialize. There is a moment in entrepreneurship that nobody prepares you for. It's the moment where you pause and think to yourself, okay, wait, is this really what building a business is supposed to feel like? You might have been doing this for years and you know that you are respected and your community sees you as a leader in the industry. And yet there are still moments in your entrepreneurial journey where you sit back, maybe at your desk, and you start thinking, what the actual hell is this? Those are the moments that I want to talk about today in this episode because entrepreneurship, especially as a Latina founder, is full of quiet WTF moments that nobody really talks out loud about. Moments that make you question everything, your business, your leadership, your pricing, positioning, and sometimes even your identity. Leadership has a funny way of revealing things inside of you that you didn't even know were there. And one of the biggest realizations that I've had over the last decade in business is this truth. You don't just build a business, the business is going to build you. And today I want to walk you through 3 of the biggest UTF moments that I see myself and Latina founders experience. Some of them come from my own journey. Some of them come from the rooms that I'm coaching women in, but all of them share this same truth. Entrepreneurship isn't hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because leadership reveals parts of you that were never allowed to exist before. So let's talk about it. Let's start with one that I think many Latina founders that are listening right now could quietly understand when they experience this themselves. A lot of this we don't necessarily say out loud until we are in a very close, intimate circle, or sometimes many of us are just getting tired of it that we are going to say that out loud. And it has to deal with the market not valuing our existence in the way that we thought or expected it to be. Many of us were raised to believe that markets, whether it's the job market or even owning a business, is going to reward based off of merit. Think about it. In our early school days and education, we would always get rewarded with some type of participation trophy or perfect attendance or anything that involved achieving a specific milestone. And it made us to believe that if we were to do all of the right things, we were going to get rewarded. So many of us went off to college because we were taught that if we go to college and we work hard and we do all the things that we are going to get a high paying job. Latinas decide that we want more. And so instead of wanting a job, we decide to launch our own businesses. And we realize early on that the industry and the market doesn't operate purely on merit. When you are a Latina founder navigating industries that were not originally built with us in mind, coming to that realization can feel like a bit of shock. Because we were raised with that con ánimo or échale ganas, right? That mentality, which is incredible. I mean, it's what got me here 11 years in. And it's what got so many of you to be able to quit your corporate job and get into entrepreneurship or start your businesses. It's that Ghana mentality that I love so much. Anytime I meet a Latina founder, I could tell they have the ganas to do the extraordinary. And a lot of it stems from, the survivalness of it. Échale ganas or con ánimo leads us to where we need to be, but precision is what's going to matter the most. Somewhere along the way, that's when you start noticing something that makes you pause. You might see somebody in your industry who's not a minority charging more than you. And maybe it's with less depth And that's when we really start realizing excellence alone is not going to automatically translate into authority in the marketplace. I remember having that realization myself several years into my business. I'd been doing this work already for about 5 years, and my clients were getting results, and my reputation was strong. But there were still moments where I could feel that friction between the caliber of my work and how the market was interpreting it. And when I started to understand that, something changed in how I approach my visibility and my positioning entirely. Your value and the market's perception of your value are not the same thing. And bridging the gap requires a different skill set that most founders were not taught. I see this play out time and time again with the women who come to me for coaching. I recently had a client who felt deeply discouraged. And it wasn't because of the work that she was producing. It was because she felt like she was constantly having to explain herself, especially in the market. When it came to her pricing or her approach or why her work mattered, she was always over explaining herself, and it became super exhausting. It's because when you are constantly explaining or over explaining, you start positioning yourself as somebody who's just asking for permission. When we stepped back and we looked at her business, the issue became very clear. She was undervalued. Her expertise was super sharp, but her positioning was soft in the market. And when it came to competing for that precision, her level of skill and mastery was not at the same level as it needed to be. She was speaking like a generalist when in reality, she had a very specific area of authority. And that's when we decided to refine it. We narrowed her positioning, we sharpened the way she described her work, and we removed any type of language that was diluting her expertise. And almost immediately, we saw those shifts. The markets didn't suddenly decide that she was more capable or more talented, but it was because her authority was actually super clear to recognize. That's the first big WTF moment in entrepreneurship. Realizing that success in business is not just about being excellent. It's about making your excellence be legitimate to the market, because the market can't value what it clearly doesn't understand. And once you start learning how to close the gap between your capabilities and your positioning, everything about how you move in business begins to change. The second moments tend to arrive a little later in your journey. Usually, if you've been building for a couple of years, any founders will remember this moment where you finally cross those six-figure marks. And sometimes you might go, is that it? If you grew up the way many of us did, six figures or hitting a certain threshold in your business is what carries weight. It's always in that number. Six figures was that milestone that the online business industry is so obsessed with. In fact, if you go online, you will hear 6, 7 figure, you will hear all this language around that specific milestone. And many of us believed that once you hit that mark, it meant that you made it. I remember having coffee conversations with some of the women that I was coaching or mentoring. And it was always that notion of hitting that specific mark, because it meant that you had freedom and that you were legitimate, that you were the made it, which I have a podcast episode. It was actually my very first podcast episode of Unapologetically Visible, where I talked about redefining success and the lie of the I've made it moments. I'll link it in the show notes below. But I remember believing all of that myself as well in my 20s. If I could just get to that level in my business, everything would stabilize. I would think that the pressure would ease a bit, that uncertainty in business would kind of calm down, and that my happiness and my life would feel so much more secure. And eventually I did reach those levels. I also remember having my first $20,000 month. And again, thinking like, okay, but that's great, but like, this isn't enough because nobody really explains it to you that revenue is not the same thing as stability. And I'm not talking about like money stability. I'm talking about nervous system stability and capacity because that sort of stability requires something different from you. It requires structure and having a really great rhythm with not only how you receive money, but how you manage it and how you really hold on to it from a nervous system regulation capacity zone. Many founders experience another quiet WTF moment, which is making money and holding a stable business. They realize that those two things are not the same and they come with two completely different skills. I see this realization often with the Latina founders that I coach. They are super exceptional at generating value. Internally, the architecture of their business hasn't caught up yet. Their revenue streams often evolve organically rather than intentionally. So obviously the business is going to work. They're going to make money. They're going to make a lot of money. Many of them are six figures. But quite often, just because they're making that much money, or maybe they've hit those marks, many of them do not feel secure. Many of them struggle with having consistency within their revenue from a month-to-month basis or a quarterly basis. Many of them, while they are doing fantastic work, they do not feel genuinely happy and excited to create in their business or to work with the people that they're working in their business. They feel that because they've hit a certain threshold, that they don't even know how to grow anymore, just like trying to feel the ability to understand what success and stability means for them, not looking outside to seeing their peers have that revenue success. I had a client come to me recently with that exact experience. From the outside, she was incredibly successful. Her business had crossed six figures multiple years. Clients were always coming in consistently. But she told me something that I hear more often than people realize. She said, Christina, I feel like I should feel more stable than I do. And when we slowed down and looked at the business altogether, we realized that the issue was coming from the structure that was supporting her work because it became complicated. Once we simplified the structure of her business, clarified her positioning, streamlined her offers, and stabilized how clients entered her world, something shifted. Within a few months, she signed a $1,000 client and a $17,000 client with far less effort than she had been exerting before. And it wasn't because she continued to be visible and put herself out there. It was because of the structure that her business finally matched at the level of the authority that she was operating from. That's the second WTF moment in entrepreneurship. The moment that you realize that making more money is only one part of leadership. It's the deeper skills that nobody teaches you in the beginning of when you start your business. It's learning how to build a business that can hold the money that you're capable of generating, understanding your nervous system and how you operate and how you lower your stress to be able to receive and to maintain. Because while those six-figure numbers look beautiful and impressive on paper, stability is what's sexier, and it's that is built with intention. The final moment I want to talk about today is one that tends to arrive much later in your journey. I'm talking about all of the seasoned business owners who really experience this once they hit that 10 plus year mark, which is probably one of the most disorienting realizations that any founder could have. And this is where it comes from growth. It's the moment that you look at your business that you have built, the brand, the messaging, the way people and the world know you, and you suddenly feel disconnected from it. That by far is one of the biggest WTF moments ever in entrepreneurship because it's a clear signal that you have evolved and it feels very out of alignment and very icky. The brand that introduced you to the industry, the market, the world, it's not who you are anymore. I've experienced this myself over the last decade. When I first started my business, I was 24. So I was in my early 20s. I wasn't even married yet. I wasn't even engaged yet. My motivations were very different back then than they are today. Back then, I was fresh out of the game. I had just graduated college. I was freelancing. I was very scrappy and doing all of the things. And so I was fueled by that startup culture and being visible and being everywhere. It was my biggest desire to prove that Latina women deserved to be seen, respected, and taken seriously in spaces that rarely reflected us. So my mission at the time was deeply personal. And it still matters deeply to me now at almost 35 and now 11 years in business. But I do believe that as you continue to grow older and you experience life and you experience all of the different shifts that entrepreneurship brings about, as you start to move through the many different seasons that life has to offer, you start realizing that your business is shifting into something different than when you first started. And once that stage of the journey is behind you, a different question starts to emerge. The question is no longer, can I succeed? But the question starts becoming, how do I want to lead now in my current moment and future? And that question can feel very surprisingly complex because the brand that you built in your early years was shaped by who you were at the time. A lot of it came from ambitions or identity, understanding the world at that current age. And leadership changes you, the experience changes you, and many responsibilities that you have now definitely change you. The way you think really evolves and your priorities evolve. And so eventually you realize something that many founders never talk about publicly, which is the brand that helped you get to the top may no longer fully represent the leader that you are becoming. And that is the moment where many founders feel tempted to force themselves back into the version of their brand that once worked for them. Because for many of us, it's familiar territory. It's recognizable and it's what people often expect from us. But growth doesn't work that way. If you genuinely have evolved as a leader, your business and your brand will eventually ask you to evolve with it. And that's where the real recalibration begins. A lot of my clients that I coach are usually in that recalibration phase. They are really recognizing that it's not the time to abandon everything that you've built, but it's time to start allowing your brand to mature alongside you. That's when your messaging starts becoming sharper and your positioning starts becoming more precise. Your voice becomes less about proving and more about stewarding the authority that you've already have earned. And when that shift happens, something powerful occurs. You stop trying to keep up with the version of your brand that the market already knows. Instead, the market begins to meet the version of you that has emerged through this experience. And that is the final WTF moment. Realizing that entrepreneurship isn't just about building a brand. It's about allowing the brand to evolve as you evolve. The most powerful brands and businesses are not static. They mature alongside the woman who leads them. Before we close today's episode, I want to offer you a moment of reflection. Because if you've been building your business for several years and you're listening to this right now, there's a really great chance that some of these WTF moments are happening to you right now. So here are some things that I want you to sit with. I want you to sit with first that your business may not be financially structured in a way that actually creates stability. And that's okay. This is the time to ask yourself, are you relying on momentum alone, or are you trying to evolve and keep revenue flowing? Another thing to sit with is thinking about how your identity has evolved beyond the brand that you originally built. If you start recognizing that you might be in a space where you have definitely evolved way faster than your brand message, then think about, is it reflecting a more mature version of you? And what is it asking in terms of evolving that you really need to sit with and think about and shift as you start thinking about your identity evolving? And when it comes to the market, is it misunderstanding your value, or is it positioning to understand your expertise? I think when we think about the market and how quickly it shifts, audience shifts as well, it's so important to look at how you are positioned in the market. Who are you being visible with? Do these opportunities actually make sense for you right now in this current moment? And if you are struggling with communicating your expertise, it's time to sit back and think about where you might need to pivot and shift to be able to get in with the market and really have that value again. Because most founders definitely do not need more tactics. What they really need is clarity about who they are becoming as leaders. One of the things that I really do believe when it comes to entrepreneurship and being a founder is that entrepreneurship is totally going to humble you. It's going to stretch you and ask you to grow in many ways that you never anticipated to grow. And if I'm being honest, one of the biggest WTF moments that I've had over the last decade is realizing just how much internal growth that this path requires. It requires you to continually say yes to this decision that you've made in owning your own business and being your own CEO when the going gets tough. And let me tell you, a lot of the times it is so easy to want to quit. And that's why you have to keep remembering that you are here for a purpose. Your why is so important, and you must continue to not give up. In my 20s, I thought that building a business was just about strategy and meeting all the people that I needed to meet and connecting with everybody and just really trying to get my name out there. But now in my late 30s, I understand something very, very different. Entrepreneurship is a beautiful personal development journey because the business isn't just something that you build. It becomes a mirror. It reflects your leadership, your fears, your capacity for responsibility, your willingness to evolve, and the love and the care that not only you have for your audience and your clients, but most of all for yourself and your future self. It allows you to have the capacity to evolve as much as you want and as much as you allow it. It will build you into a completely different person than the one who started it. If you resonated with this episode, here's what I want you to do next. Subscribe and leave a review because that helps this podcast reach more women like us, women who were never meant to stay hidden, women who are meant to be highly visible leaders. Share this episode with someone you love who has these WTF moments in entrepreneurship. And DM me on Instagram at the Social Butterfly Gal. Tell me your biggest reframe or your biggest breakthrough from today's conversation. And if you're feeling the call to go deeper, to recalibrate your personal brand, leadership, and your visibility, I would love to support you through one-on-one coaching. You can find the coaching information and offers in the links in the show notes below, or send me a DM with the word coaching, and I'll personally walk you through what offers are in alignment with your current season and what it looks like to step into this next era with clarity, confidence, and unapologetic authority. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and for all the shares and reviews. Remember this, you didn't come this far to play safe. You came here to be unapologetically visible. I'll see you next week.